And before I get started, I just want to say, I really appreciate the effort Manu had put into the entire program. I can very honestly say that we would not be, my co-founders and I would not be where we are without this program, the mentorship, the resources, the network, really everything. I'll dive into our history, but I actually met my co-founder, at iVenture. We were working on separate startups, and just the environment of like putting a lot of smart people together in a room, I think, fosters, incredible innovation. And so, very deeply grateful for this program. And I can tell you, I've talked to quite a lot of entrepreneurs, across the country, and this program's pretty rare. So, all right. So this is just a high-level, somewhat redacted pitch deck, and just the first half of it. But I'll just dive in to give you guys sort of a feel for the company. So QuillBot is an AI writing platform on a mission to make writing painless. So we build tools that augment and automate various writing tasks. This is a quick glance at the company. So we have 6 million monthly active users. We're growing between 4 to 5x year over year. The team size is currently 40. All the founders are from computer science at UIUC, and we've also built a phenomenal team of 30 engineers and NLP researchers. To date, we've raised $4.25 million, and we're actually about to enter our Series A fundraising. So the problem that we're really tackling is, writing is quite hard, and it takes a lot of time, and it's pretty painful. And so what we're doing is trying to make it painless. And we do that through various, products like our paraphraser and our summarizer and grammar checker. So our paraphraser can take any content and make it longer, shorter, more formal, more creative, more fluent. It can basically adjust writing to match whatever style you're looking for. Our summarizer can take large articles and condense it down into quick bite-sized paragraphs. And our grammar checker is like your traditional grammar checker, but it can fix any punctuation, spelling, or grammar mistakes. So this is a pretty universal pain point. Literally every single high school and college student on the planet faces this. But there's tons of professionals such as content writers, news agencies, analysts, and research firms like Gartner. So this is just our monthly active user growth over time. 95% of this has been completely organic, either through word of mouth or search or social media platforms like TikTok. To date, we've spent less than $150,000 on marketing. And we have really strong engagement as well. So our average session duration is about 15 minutes, and our month 3 retention. So any visitor hitting the site 3 months out, about a quarter of them will return. So, so to just dive into our, the journey, I was part of iVenture cohort 3. And I was, as Manu was mentioning, working on a separate startup. And my co-founder, Jason, he was working on a question generation AI. So basically, feed this AI like a PDF, like a chapter of your textbook, and it can just generate a quiz from it. And in that process, he actually figured out how to rewrite sentences, leveraging, state-of-the-art natural language processing. And within literally a week, he scraped together this like Google Translate style interface and just posted on Reddit, and it just took off. Like the first post got over 1,000 upvotes. He had 100 daily active users the next day, and I was his pretty good friend at the time. We met at iVenture, and we like hung out all the time, went to all the iVenture events, and he was talking to me basically throughout building this, product, this tool, and it just seemed super interesting. And I saw the initial traction. So we sort of joined forces, and our third co-founder was actually a full-time software engineer at Epic. And he actually quit his job and joined it before we had any, material traction. I think at the time we probably had a few hundred daily active users. We were making no money. We just had the $10,000 iVenture gave us. And, this was actually at the end of our year. And funny enough, Jason had not spent a dime out of the 10,000. He didn't even set up a bank account. And so like I came in and I set up a bank account, and Noah and Manu graciously let us extend our $10,000, dollars to the next year. And that was just phenomenal seed capital. We were super scrappy, but it paid our cloud bill. We needed to get these GPUs to train our NLP models, and it was just phenomenal resources. So our early traction, just some insights that we had here. I would say that it was kind of hard giving up my startup that I spent so long building. I was working on it for several years. But I thought Jason was a phenomenal co-founder, and it was very clear from just the very early traction that there was product market fit here. And so I made the tough decision of folding up the startup and working on QuillBot. So I would say, trust your gut in those tough decisions. And as you look to, commercialize your technology, really look for product market fit over anything else, and really start testing your product as soon as possible. So, early days were really interesting. A lot of growth hacking. We spent a lot of time on Reddit trying to figure out how to get viral. And we did quite a few times. We were on the front page of Reddit probably 3 or 4 times. But, what I would say is, in hindsight, a lot of that traffic went to waste because we actually had very low retention. And this was something we figured out like a year and a half later. But, growth is far more than just marketing. So what you really want to do in your early days is you want to get an initial user base that you can test your product with, but you want to make sure that you're actually capturing the attention of your users and that you're retaining your users long term. Otherwise, it's effectively a leaky bucket. And, if you can't just like leave your product alone and come back and still have the same, have users, then you have a problem. So, the technology was pretty half-baked at the time. We spent a lot of time improving the proficiency of the AI models. And what we started to figure out is every time we upgraded the AI models, our retention rate actually improved. And we figured out that was, basically existential to the company is like improving the technology nonstop and innovating on that front. And once we started getting to a sustainable retention rate, that's when we started seeing things like really pick up. And then the third thing that we noticed was, SEO is phenomenal. So we started ranking for some high search volume keywords on Google, and that was just a complete game changer because every single day we would just get like 1,000 new users, completely free, very high intent, high retention. Probably a year in, people started pinging us. So we had this character limit on our website. You could only put in like 500 characters at a time. And that was because it was actually very expensive to serve, or expensive at the time to serve the AI models. But yeah, people kept pinging us and asking to pay for a higher character limit. And they would just like sort of trickle in. But, we finally decided to just like charge people $10 a month and give them, 10,000 characters at a time instead of 500. It turns out people actually started to pay for it. And we were actually shocked because none of us would ever, pay for $10 a month for 10,000 characters. We would rather just like chunk up our paragraphs and put it in like one at a time. But people started to pay. And before we knew it, we were actually profitable too. I think we were profitable probably 4 months after we started monetizing. We started paying ourselves a salary. We started growing very quickly. And we got to a point where it was just the three of us, and we had about 1 million monthly active users, and we were like really profitable at that time. We were making like 6 figures in profit, paying ourselves salaries, and it was just going to be a lifestyle business. We weren't really going to do anything like too big with it, but we thought that there was a pretty compelling opportunity in expanding the platform out horizontally and adding additional tooling that can automate other writing tasks. And we started leveling up our technology a lot. And so we decided to go out and raise a seed round with the intent of just, optimizing our platform. So really quickly, I would highly recommend, if you have a consumer product, especially software, to just like take a screenshot of this chart, because, if we had this day one, we would be much further along. But what you're really looking to do is increase your current user base, which has been active for at least 2 weeks. And, we at times had tens of thousands of users on the platform because we went viral for, on Reddit or something like that. But they were all new users, and they would actually just drop off to inactive users. They thought it was kind of gimmicky. It wasn't really solving a clear pain point for them. And we weren't tracking this, right? So we weren't discerning between current users and new users, and we didn't really have visibility into why we weren't growing week over week. So yeah, if you have a consumer product, I would recommend setting up tracking like ASAP and really hone in on improving your current user base instead of just new users. That being said, here are some of the channels we experimented with, and I can sort of go through each of them and how successful they were for us. So search engine marketing is really good if you have a premium product, like either freemium or premium, and you have a clear lifetime value for your users. And what you can do is target very high intent keywords, so like on Google and Bing and things like that. And it tends to be really cheap. It tends to drive a lot of very relevant traffic. But, you're just going to be spending a ton of money without getting it paid back if you don't have an effective way of monetizing your users. For us, I think Facebook has been like a horrible platform. Most of our users are Gen Zs or millennials, and they're not really on Facebook. But I think a lot of the instrumentation around the Facebook ad platform is poor as well. And I don't know, I think it works for consumer packaged goods, but besides that, I would not recommend Facebook too much. I think you should experiment with it and just see what channels work for you. But yeah, it was just like throwing money down a hole for us. Snapchat was all right. It wasn't great. Most of our users are on desktops. And so Snapchat is inherently a mobile platform. But that being said, it's really good for brand awareness. TikTok is very good. I would say TikTok is a very unsaturated platform, very easy to go viral. If you're thoughtful about your content, it goes a really long way. I would recommend, if you guys have a consumer product and some degree of stickiness on your product, literally just take $1,000 from your 10K from iVenture and spend it on TikTok influencers. Get like 15 to 20 influencers to make a post. And, the KPI we measure is CPM, so cost per 1,000 views. And, our blended CPM is like 50 cents to 75 cents, which is dirt cheap compared to like YouTube. You'd be spending $20 or something, in that ballpark. So I would highly recommend TikTok. The ad platform is actually pretty good on TikTok too. And it's just got released. And I think, especially if you're targeting Gen Zs, especially if you have a mobile app, any physical products, they all do really well on TikTok. And none of the big companies are there yet. So I think there's probably like a 1 year timeline before the platform gets saturated, and then you have to like move on to the next thing. You know, yeah, as I mentioned, SEO has been our bread and butter. It's been our primary driver for traffic. So it's not for every product, but if you can sort of figure out search, it has made so many companies in the past, and happy to talk to anyone offline about strategies for SEO. And yeah, I would just really look into that and view it as a viable channel. And the other thing I would say is SEO is a marathon, not a sprint. And so you have to really invest in building the credibility of your site over like 6 months to a year. But if you do, I think, it becomes free at that point. It's a sort of a fixed cost investment. And then, Reddit was really good to us. At this point, we are banned from Reddit, so we can't use the channel anymore. But you can really do a lot of guerrilla marketing on Reddit. I think Reddit's really nice because they have a bunch of subreddits. And so you can find a subreddit that has high intent for your product or for your startup. And, the first like 10 posts, no one's going to give you a hard time. After that, people start catching on, and you have to be like more clever. But yeah, you can do all sorts of interesting strategies with Reddit. But I think, our core takeaway sort of across all of the platforms is you need really good content and a really good product. And then marketing is very easy. If you're trying to force your product down people's throats, it's just not going to work. So, for us, what we found is like the second we started solving a real pain point, it was just more of like, a PSA versus like really trying to sell people. So I'll talk through some of our fundraising experiences. I would say when we went out to raise our seed, we were probably 2 years in. I think we were 2 years into the company, and we were just heads down. Like we did not really talk to anyone for 2 years. The three of us were just like in this hacker house in Lombard, and we were just building product the whole time. We were learning NLP. We talked to maybe a couple investors ahead of time, but the numbers looked great. Like the numbers were super organic. I think the TAM was very large, and we just didn't quite have the network to go out and raise like a very competitive round. And then the other thing was we went out and like talked to a bunch of Chicago VCs for the first like month and a half, 2 months. And I sort of regret doing that. I think we should have just jumped straight into coastal VCs. So if I have a recommendation for folks is like practice in Chicago, but go out and try to raise from coastal VCs. Sort of 10 out of 10 times, you'll get a better valuation, you'll get friendlier terms, you'll get market terms. And I think there are phenomenal VCs in Chicago, but there are extraordinary VCs out in the coasts. And there are far more of them too. And they have, larger funds, and they're quicker to write checks. The other thing I would recommend is running a tight and prepared process. So, begin your fundraise and plan for a month and just have your pitch deck lined up, have a data room lined up, practice a bit before going out. But then you want to stage all your intro calls in the first week or two, and then all your partner meetings the next week or two. And I can sort of talk about the fundraising process here and each stage of it. But the goal is to get multiple term sheets in at the same exact time. And that enables you to sort of dictate your own terms and get a better valuation and get market terms too. I would start networking like well ahead of any fundraise that you're going to run, especially with advisors. I wouldn't actually network with the investors. I mean, you can network with the investors themselves, but I would really recommend networking with people who can make introductions to many VCs. I think a lot of VCs like to say they want to get to know you, like, a year before they write the check. But the reality is that many VCs are more than willing to write a check like 2 days after knowing you. The other thing too is there's sort of standard market valuations depending on your growth rate, the stage you're in, anything like that. And I would recommend talking to entrepreneurs like myself or like Rohit or any of the iVenture alum who can get you a gauge for what current market valuations are. Sometimes they're like a multiple of ARR, and I think that's really important so that you get proper terms. I think VCs can tend to be opportunistic at times. The other thing too is I would highly recommend doing blind reference checks on your investors. So, while they're diligencing you, you should be diligencing them as well. So talk to folks in your network and see what their reputation is. But more than that, just figure out portfolio CEOs they have and just message them on LinkedIn and try to get a call with them and see how they like the VC. Because, VCs will sit on your board or be on your cap table for 5 to 10 years. And so you want to make sure that, they're ethical and they add value both on the upside and downside is really important too. And that they'll, roll up their sleeves and answer your call or anything like that. All right. So this is sort of a standard seed process. You start off with just an analyst, associate, or principal call for the most part, unless you have an introduction directly to a partner. So this is, just a standard 30-minute to 60-minute pitch. And you just go with your pitch deck, pitch them. If they like you, they'll usually, introduce you to a partner at the fund to do a similar, 30 to 60-minute pitch. And in between, they'll ask you, questions about the company, maybe get some high-level data points. You'll send over your pitch deck. I would also recommend using DocSend. Never just send a PDF of your pitch deck. It's market to use DocSend, and you don't want your pitch deck sort of floating around. Then you'll have a partner call. So you'll sort of triangulate on one of like many partners at the fund, and you'll just do a 30 to 60-minute pitch. I would really recommend just practicing and getting a canned 30-minute pitch down. At the partner call, it'll feel pretty much the same as the analyst call, except they'll ask you maybe tougher questions. If they like you after that, then they'll do some serious diligence. So usually they'll ask for a data room, which has like a cohort analysis and an operating model, which I would recommend preparing ahead of time. This is usually if you're a consumer business on the cohort analysis. And the operating models, just like a traditional financial model. I wouldn't, if you're seed, you can usually get away without having one. But during my seed round, I got asked probably 60% of the time for an operating model and like a hiring plan. After, if that all looks good to the partner, you usually spend a decent amount of time with the partner, getting to know them. So a couple of dinners, just casual conversations. You can go on a walk with them. After that, they'll usually invite you on a Monday for an all-partner meeting. So that's all the partners at the fund, and you basically do your same 30 to 60-minute pitch. Usually, if it gets to that point, and your partner that you were introduced to was a senior partner, it's usually pretty easy to close and get a term sheet. If your partner was junior, then usually you have to convince some decision makers at that meeting. After that, they'll ask for reference checks on you. They'll do, Manu gave us great reference checks during our seed round, and it really helped. And they'll ask for your cap table, and once they ask for your cap table, you're going to get a term sheet. And so some VCs like to drag out the entire process. I would keep it very tight. Coastal VCs can go from the first intro call from an analyst to a written check, and not like to a term sheet in like 10 days or less. So you can run a very tight process if you want, with a lot of deal heat. We spent a lot of time just programming and researching NLP and talking to users. Actually, we spent a ton of time talking to users And I think all three of those things were really important to get it to really stick. And so my co-founders pretty much spent their entire time either programming or doing NLP research. And I probably spent like 35% of my time programming. The remainder was doing like either marketing or customer interviews. So like you can go to a VC with literally nothing, and they, like, especially coastal VCs, can write you like a $300K check. Early stages, VCs really look for a strong founder. And so if you can go to them with like a decent amount of credibility, engineering at UIUC goes a very long way, and a decent idea, and you are compelling and can convince them that you can execute, they can write a check. So, I don't actually think you need any benchmarks. Folks usually say like 100,000 ARR to get a seed round. I don't think that's true. I've seen seed rounds go with companies that have made like zero in revenue. So, but that being said, having users, having ARR, all of that stuff adds credibility, and will improve your chances of getting funding, getting a better VC, getting a larger check size, things like that. All right. So right now we're in the sort of like growth stage 1 to 10. We've in the last year hired 35 folks entirely remotely. I needed to really change my mindset to build a team that can build the product. Earlier, especially like when we were probably 10 to 15 employees, I was just hyper focused on the product. And now I spend, I'm probably in product meetings for like 3 hours a week. I spend most of my time recruiting and interviewing folks, and like now VC pitches. You have to manage a board, which is like, for a young founder, is actually can be tricky, especially if you have multiple VCs or multiple board members. But they're also extremely helpful and great mentors and great advisors, and have phenomenal networks. I think at each subsequent stage, you have to start crystallizing a longer and longer term vision, and eventually get to a point where you can, make a cogent argument to an investor that this can be like a standalone public company. And I think it's a very healthy exercise. And you need to communicate that with your team like nonstop. And there's just been a ton of very uncomfortable learning experiences, but I'm very grateful that I went through all of those, with people management, board management, fundraising, all of that stuff. And I think there was just a high density of experiences sort of going through the growth stage. So next steps, literally next week, we're going to go on raise a Series A. So that's always a fun time, fundraising. And we're just building out and optimizing our platform. Actually, we have like several new products in the works that we're very excited about, that I think are going to be game-changing, and aggressively hiring. So our target is about 55 folks in 3 months, not like hiring, but the total team size. And just scaling from like an early stage startup to a growth stage startup. And that just requires adding a bunch of like supporting functions like finance and HR and things like that. So some miscellaneous insight. Oh, sorry. That's one slide from there. Some insights building a deep tech company. So I would a lot of my friends are running deep tech companies, and I would say a trap could be just like working on the technology all the time and not commercializing it. And I think you want to show product market fit very quickly. So just trying to think of all the applications for your technology and trying to figure out if folks are willing to pay for it. The other thing too is there's like nonstop imposter syndrome. We're in a space where everyone else is like a PhD, and we learned everything on YouTube. So, you know, but it turns out you can actually do it, right? And like, especially nowadays, and there's just tremendous like open source resources that you have. So yeah, and the weird thing was like we still did it day one, but we had no conviction that we could actually learn this or like actually produce competitive technology with some of the bigger players. Yeah, the other thing, as I was sort of mentioning, is like really good talent is hard to find, and like especially startup talent has a lot of options. But you know, even if you're very early stage, if you have a compelling vision, good funding, and a good network, you can get some game changing early talent that can really accelerate your growth. Um, Especially in deep tech, like I'm talking like technical talent, researchers, you know, PhDs, things like that. I think deep tech is you know, and I realize it's like a very broad category, but I think working on innovative technologies is a good place to build a startup because there's far more white space. You know, the technology is like sort of by definition half baked, and existing product offerings are underdeveloped. So, you know, I think the perfect timing, and we were definitely at this point, is when the technology is like not quite there, but you can sort of scrape together like a very rough MVP and then get initial traction, start testing out the product, and then the technology just clicks, right? And then right away you have the UX down, you have the sort of product intuition down, and then it becomes plug and play. So the early days are very uncomfortable though, because there's no clear signs you'll actually solve the technical challenges. Yeah, and some just additional learnings. You know, great mentors have been huge for myself. You know, I wouldn't even say like go get like a dozen mentors. I would just say like go and get 2 or 3 mentors who've done it before, who are like very well connected. You know, exited founders are great and who just want to help. You know, who aren't just in it for advisory shares or anything like that. And you can build like a phenomenal relationship with them. And when things get tough, like those are the people who will like really help, you know. I would recommend getting a good lawyer. You know, we went through a bunch of like, not like, yeah, I wouldn't underestimate getting a good lawyer at incorporation. You know, I think that goes a really long way. And there are very few good startup lawyers in Chicago. And I wouldn't just get a normal corporate lawyer. Like I would make sure your lawyer has been both on the VC side and the startup side, has seen a startup from incorporation to exit, hopefully to IPO too, and do reference checks on them too. But a really good lawyer is like far more than just legal help. Our lawyer actually introduced us to Sierra Ventures, which was our lead VC. They introduced us to a bunch of service providers and literally like anything we need, I just text him and he's like, okay, like I got you. I can introduce you to this person or that. They're well connected too. The other thing that it took a long time to make this mindset shift, but you know, the biggest resource you're actually wasting is time and not capital. So early days, we would like go through hoops to save like $500 or $1,000 here and there. We didn't hire someone until 2 years in because we were like trying to be scrappy with the capital. And like in hindsight, we should have hired like 1 year into the company. And you know, yeah, you're really trying to cut down the time it takes to get to each next step. You know, more than the dollars in your bank.